not using it. Facebook is removing pro-nuclear energy content, and we see this story specifically talking about Will Sheckle and Dick Smith, who they've been getting these complaints. Specifically, Nuclear for Australia has received 44 complaints from supporters who have had posts taken down. This is just yesterday. Since when did Meta get into that realm? It's no longer is it okay. You're not allowed to demonize these green energy things, but now it's like saying okay. Well, what about this? It's net zero. And it's like, no, you can't do that. Yeah. It's like,
well, yeah, I mean, the unreliable power, wind and solar, it's never going to really get you to net zero. There are only two really practical ways to get you to net zero. And I'm not saying you should, honestly. I don't think you should. But nuclear, of course, doesn't have any carbon emissions. It gives you reliable baseload power over decades. The only other practical way to get to net zero, did you know that we export 200 million metric tons of thermal coal every year to Asia? We provide them with cheap, reliable energy, right? That's double the amount of energy we use every year. In Australia, I think we use 250 terawatts a year. So the only other way to get to net zero, other than nuclear, is to take the coal, half of it that goes to Asia, and you bring it right back into port, and then you got your net zero.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the Climate Council, they complained in this particular article saying TikTok gave them a strike like us for integrity and authenticity for hitting out at the coalition's nuclear energy policy, basically taken. I mean, this is nuts, and they're completely skewing the debate. And it's like, well, who's funding you guys, basically? I just can't believe how weak our politicians have been on censorship. It really makes me aggressive.
The article says 44 times content's been removed, but all of them were technical. The response from Meta is there was a technical issue. Come on.
How many grains of sand make a heap, as Tim will.
I really don't think, Joel, just on that point where you mentioned about the government worried about censorship. I mean, we just talked about Tanya Peblesek before, who censored a text message for closing down a mine. She's showing no one. Why would she not close people who are opposing views?
Selective enforcement is one of the primary weapons of the controllers, whoever they are, whoever actually runs the show, whoever actually runs the United States government. It's clearly not Joe Biden. The selective enforcement of laws is the power.
Yeah, it makes me very homicidal because a lot of people on the right, they don't quite get it sometimes. They're like, let me give you an example. When 9/11 happened, the things that we have left over from that is a security state, which it wasn't that big. It didn't exist as big at that time. And that is everywhere now. So we have anti-terror specific units for the whole word terror is a relatively new term. And the idea that now we've got terror forces and policing units is one thing. A more modern example is with a lot of these climate protesters that do receive money in America from Soros, but in Australia we see this as well. No one likes the climate protesters here. They find them as pests. They don't like that they shut down the traffic, the trains, and yet these people, they're driving additional powers being given to police and government. And people like us, we're cheering for it. Yeah, get them off and this and that. Okay, these people get off on bail, no worries. But the next time I want to do a protest for a time like COVID, maybe the next time, it's like throw him in jail. Preemptively as well. And that's
you may not have needed to post about it. They just need to ask you about it, and in an interview, come to a reasonable conclusion that you would host a event that may obstruct essential infrastructure. So they sit you down, and the way the interview goes, it won't be optional for you. So you'll have to have the interview, right? And you can have legal counsel with you, but that legal counsel, as these are phrased, you will need to try and explain: are you intending to host an unauthorized gathering that will block essential infrastructure? And if you are, and if they reasonably believe that, they may be able to use powers to detain you preemptively.
They have pre-crime laws here
for essential infrastructure.
I'll give you an example, not with the infrastructure, but with something else. During COVID, when I was in Sydney and I was in the western suburbs, there was a planned protest I was going to cover as a journalist in August 2021. And a week before, the police came to my house. They said, if you go within 5 kilometres of Victoria Park between 9 a.m. and I do believe 5 p.m., we'll throw you in jail for 5 years. So that made its way naturally to George Christensen and Mark Latham, who were talking about it privately. And they were saying, you mean to tell me if I want Jamal to come to Parliament House during those times, which falls within the 5Ks, he'll be thrown in prison for 5 years? And George said to him, yeah, that's right. So we do have that stuff. And by the way, where did those laws come from? A police officer told me, he said they use these laws to stop often bikies and gangs from meeting at certain times for certain things. So we didn't speak up for their rights, and now it's being applied to a journalist. And that's what I was doing. I was covering these protests like that. And it's like, whoa.
I actually think where the climate protesters blocked the bridge, she ended up having a 9-month custodial sentence. Yeah, okay, don't block essential infrastructure. I get that. I thought 9 months was a little bit too harsh for a first instance where she hadn't blocked essential infrastructure before. So those kind of essential infrastructure laws, I actually disagree with, even though it's like, yeah, get the greenies. Oh, not really.
I spoke up at the time and I said, guys, this is escalating things. A lot of these greenies, they're cashed up. They've got good people behind them. They get off by saying, well, you know, they were very anxious about the climate crisis. Therefore, on mental health grounds, we'll let them go.
Green staffer Shoebridge, who went and vandalised Captain Cook, out of work hours, though. It was okay. It wasn't during office hours. She wasn't in the Parliament actively graffitiing there. It was after work hours, so it was okay.
It's insane. Anyways, did anyone else have anything to add on that particular topic?
I agree with you there. When you make a law to the lowest common denominator, bikies, in that example,
yeah,
it does put the rest of us who want to gather for whatever reason into trouble, because the next government can say, right, okay, you Christians that are at church there, you're not going to go there anymore. You're not going to meet at home anymore. In fact, we'll ban a book and we'll also ban the Bible a few years later.
Yeah,
that's right.
You have to know how the laws are going to be applied against people who aren't popular, against you. And so, anytime you cheer something on, any form of authoritarianism or high sanctions, you always have to think, okay, well, what happens when this is going to come my way?